The world, Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, the world was never without form and void except one time. Now Jeremiah says, I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, and the heavens, and they had no light. A reference to Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. Not the fact that the earth was without form and void. We studied last week that word halah, H-A-H-L-A-Y, L-A-H. It means it became without form and void. Something happened from Genesis 1:1 to Genesis 1:2. That between verse 1 and verse 2, something happened. God created the heaven and the earth. Whatever he does is perfect. It was a perfect heaven and a perfect earth. And then in Genesis 1:2, the earth became without form and void. And between those two verses, we have what is known as the gap theory, or a huge gap. We don't know how many years expired, but that's the time that the angels were on earth worshiping God, and the time that they rebelled with Satan and his angels. Verse 23, I beheld the earth, lo, it was without form and void. The heavens, they had no light. I beheld the mountains, and lo, they trembled, and all the hills moved lightly. I beheld, and there was no man. Was there ever a time when there was no man on earth? Never. Never. I beheld, and there was no man. Not when mankind was made, but before man was here. That's the time man wasn't on earth. And all the birds of the heavens were fled. I beheld, and lo, the fruitful places was a wilderness, and all the cities thereof were broken down. And why were they broken down? At the presence of the Lord, and by his what? Fierce anger. That's right. Between Genesis 1:1 and between Genesis 1 verse 2, the fierce anger of the Lord is what made the world, or the earth, without form and void. And that's where many people believe the dinosaurs came from in the Ice Age, and why the fossils on earth are thousands and thousands of years old. And that's why, without a doubt, the world could be classified as being 1,000,000 years old. No one knows, because only God knows when the heaven and the earth was created. We have a good idea when man was created, but we know that man was actually created before or after the earth was already formed. All right, since you're in Jeremiah, go right. Take another right. Go to the next book, the book of Ezekiel, chapter 28. These are just some passages so that you can know what I'm teaching you is not something that I've made up. And Louis Sperry Schaefer, in his systematic theology, really brings these principles out about Ezekiel and Isaiah. And he points them out in a fantastic way about how they mean Satan, and about the problems that the world was experiencing at that time. Ezekiel 28, verse 11. Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, take up a lamentation against the king of Tyrus. The king of Tyrus was Satan possessed. He wasn't demon possessed, he was possessed by Satan. We'll see that in the following scriptures. Thus saith the Lord God, thou sealest up the sum. Sealest up the sum means you are the finest. You were the finest. You were full of wisdom, and you were perfect in beauty. He is speaking to Satan now. We know that the king of Tyrus was not perfect in beauty. We know that the king of Tyrus in verse 13 was not in the Garden of Eden. It's a reference to Satan. Notice this. Thou hast been in Eden, but it's not the Garden of Eden. It's called Eden, the Garden of God. You see, Eden, before the human race, was called the Garden of God. Eden, after the human race was created, was called the Garden of Eden. You have been in Eden, the Garden of God. But notice what his coverings were like. Every precious stone was thy covering. The sardius, the topaz, the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, the carbuncle, the gold, and the workmanship of thy tabrets and of thy pipes was prepared in the day that you were created. You were the anointed cherub. The word anointed means Messiah. You were the Messiah's angel that covered him. In other words, he was the personal angel of Jesus Christ. And I have set thee so, says God. You were upon the holy mountain of God, and you walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. He worshiped God at that time. You were perfect in your ways from the day that you were created until. Now we know the king of Tyrus wasn't perfect in his days to the day he was created. So this is a reference to Satan. See, the reason why I say this because there should be some of you who are theological students enough to know that there are some people that say this is not about Satan, it's about the king of Tyrus, and it just takes a little bit of brains to realize how off the wall they are. You were perfect in your ways from the day that you were created until iniquity was found in thee. And by the multitude of thy merchandise, the world system, they have filled the midst of thee with violence, and you have sinned. Therefore, I will cast thee as profane out of the mountain of God. He was reprobate. He's being cast out of the presence of worship in God. And I will destroy you, O covering cherub. It's an angel, it's not a king. From the midst of the stones of fire. Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. You thought you were something. You have corrupted your wisdom by reason of your brightness. I want to tell you something about Satan this morning. He is very bright. And a lot of people are suckers for Satanism today because they're suckers for human good. And a lot of people will back up anything that sounds good. If it's doing something that sounds good, they think it's of God. If they're doing something that sounds evil, they think it's of Satan, when in reality, much of the good that we're seeing today in the human race is nothing more than satanic philosophy. Notice what it says. Your heart was lifted up, verse 17, because of the beauty. You are corrupted. You corrupted your wisdom by reason of your brightness. Now God says, I will cast thee to the ground. I'll lay you before kings so that they can behold you. You have defiled the sanctuaries by the multitude of your iniquities, by the iniquity of thy traffic. Therefore, I'll bring forth the fire from the midst of thee. It will devour thee. And I'll bring you to ashes upon the earth in the sight of all them that behold thee. And all they that know you among the people shall be astonished at thee. Thou shalt be a terror, and never shall thou be any more. Another judgment from Satan. Now, do you think the divine judgment, the divine sentence was true? Do you think that it was a good sentence?